In 1495, a disease exploded across Europe. It spread through armies, it spread through cities, it spread through royal courts. Within months, people developed horrific sores across their bodies. Their faces rotted, their skin peeled away. Many died in agony. Europe called it the Great Pox. Today, we know it as syphilis. Now, you might think this story is about medicine, or religion, or war. It isn't, at least not directly. Because one of the most important inventions in human history emerged from humanity's desperate attempt to stop that disease. An invention so controversial that governments tried to ban it, churches condemned it, entire industries were built around it, and billions of people alive today exist because of it. It was a condom. That sounds ridiculous. It really does. How could a thin piece of material wrapped around a body part influence population growth, public health, sexual behavior, military strategy, global economics, and even the spread of entire civilizations? The answer is far stranger than most people realize, because the history of the condom is not really about sex. It's about survival. And this story begins thousands of years before latex ever existed. Long before modern medicine, people understood one simple fact. Sex had consequences. Some of those consequences were desirable. Others were terrifying. Pregnancy could dramatically alter a family's future. Disease could destroy entire communities. And so, civilizations across the ancient world started searching for protection. The earliest evidence is frustratingly unclear. History disappears into myth. One ancient story from Crete described King Minos, whose semen was supposedly cursed with deadly creatures. According to the legend, protective sheaths made from animal bladders were used to prevent harm during intercourse. Whether the story is true is impossible to know. But it reveals something important. People were already imagining barrier protection thousands of years ago. In ancient Egypt, linen coverings may have been used for protection and status. In China, wealthy men used coverings made from oiled silk paper. In Japan, some early devices were made from tortoiseshell, horn, and leather. Just imagine that for a moment. Today, people complain when a condom feels slightly uncomfortable. 400 years ago, someone was attempting the same task with a piece of polished horn. Human ingenuity is impressive. Human desperation is even more impressive. But none of these early devices transformed the world. That would come later. Because Europe was about to experience one of the most terrifying epidemics in its history. In the late 1400s, syphilis appeared in Europe, and it was horrifying. Modern medicine can treat syphilis relatively easily. The original outbreaks were different. Victims developed grotesque lesions. Bodies became covered in sores. Some patients died within months. Entire cities panicked. People had no idea what caused it. They blamed foreigners. They blamed enemies. They blamed sinners. Everyone blamed someone else. Nobody had a cure. And that fear created demand. Massive demand. In 1564, an Italian physician named Gabriele Falloppio published what is widely considered the first documented description of a condom in Europe. His design used a linen sheath tied with a ribbon. Falloppio claimed he tested it on over 1,000 men and that none contracted syphilis. Whether the numbers were accurate remains debated, but the impact was enormous. For the first time, a protective barrier was being promoted as a public health tool. Not a luxury, not a curiosity, a medical device. And once people realized it worked, the idea spread. Fast. Soon, condoms were appearing across Europe. Most were handmade. Many were constructed from animal intestines or bladders. They were washed, reused, and sometimes passed between people. Which sounds horrifying today, but compared to syphilis, it seemed perfectly reasonable. By the 1700s, condom manufacturing had become a real business. Merchants sold them in markets, barbers stocked them, pharmacies offered them, even theaters sold them to wealthy customers. And this is where things get interesting, because the condom had quietly changed identities. It was no longer just about disease. People had discovered something else. It could prevent pregnancy. That realization triggered one of the oldest conflicts in human history, the battle between personal freedom and social control. Religious authorities were horrified. Many believed contraception interfered with divine will. Others feared it encouraged promiscuity. Critics argued that easier sex would lead to moral collapse. Supporters argued that families should have control over their own lives. Sound familiar? The debate has never really ended. Only the technology changes. The arguments remain surprisingly similar. For centuries, condoms existed in a strange gray zone. Widely used, quietly purchased, publicly condemned, privately embraced. And then the Industrial Revolution arrived. Everything changed. In 1839, Charles Goodyear discovered vulcanized rubber. The process transformed rubber from a fragile material into something durable and practical. Most people remember Goodyear because of tires, but his invention revolutionized something else: condoms. Before rubber, condoms were expensive. Production was slow, availability was limited. After rubber, mass production became possible. The first rubber condoms appeared in the 1850s. They were thick, extremely thick. Compared to modern versions, they felt more like bicycle inner tubes. But they worked, and more importantly, ordinary people could finally afford them. For the first time in history, large segments of society had access to reliable protection. That single technological leap would alter millions of lives. But governments were not entirely happy about it. In the United States, anti-obscenity laws restricted contraception advertising. Condoms often had to be marketed as disease prevention devices rather than pregnancy prevention tools. Even discussing them publicly could trigger controversy. Think about the irony. Industrial society was becoming more modern. Railroads crossed continents, telegraphs connected nations, factories transformed economies. Yet people still struggled to openly discuss one of the most basic aspects of human existence: sex. And that contradiction would become even more obvious when war arrived. The First World War created a problem. Millions of young men were suddenly concentrated together. Far from home, far from families, far from social restrictions. Military leaders quickly discovered something alarming. Sexually transmitted diseases could disable armies almost as effectively as enemy bullets. Some countries embraced condoms. Others resisted. Germany actively promoted them among soldiers. The United States initially did not. The consequences were dramatic. Hundreds of thousands of American soldiers contracted sexually transmitted infections during the war. Military planners learned an uncomfortable lesson. Morality campaigns could not stop biology. Prevention worked better than wishful thinking, and by the 20th century, condoms had become a serious public health tool. Not everyone accepted that reality, but reality rarely asks permission. Then came the sexual revolution, and everything accelerated. The invention of latex dramatically improved manufacturing. Condoms became thinner, stronger, cheaper, more reliable. Mass production exploded. At the same time, urbanization transformed relationships. Movies transformed culture. Advertising transformed behavior. The 20th century created a world where individuals had more freedom than ever before. Condoms became part of that freedom. But another challenge was approaching, one that would redefine their importance entirely. In the early 1980s, doctors began noticing something terrifying. Young, healthy people were developing rare illnesses. Their immune systems were collapsing. Nobody understood why. The disease would eventually receive a name: HIV/AIDS. Fear spread rapidly. Rumors spread faster. Entire communities were devastated. And suddenly the condom returned to center stage. Not as a symbol of pleasure, not as a symbol of contraception, but as a symbol of survival. Public health campaigns appeared across the world. Governments launched education programs. Celebrities promoted awareness. Doctors pleaded for prevention. For millions of people, a condom became the difference between life and death. It is difficult to overstate how dramatically AIDS changed public perception. A product once hidden in drawers became a global public health necessity. The same invention that had fought syphilis centuries earlier was now fighting another epidemic. History was repeating itself. But here is the detail most people never think about. The condom did more than prevent disease. It changed demographics. It changed economics. It changed the future itself. For most of human history, family size was largely determined by chance. Modern contraception changed that equation. Couples gained unprecedented control over when they had children, how many children they had, and sometimes whether they had children at all. That shift influenced education, employment, urban growth, women's rights, household wealth, and long-term economic development. Entire societies began reorganizing around reproductive choice. A simple barrier device helped create a completely different relationship between sexuality and parenthood. That is not a small change. That is civilization-level change. Today, condoms are manufactured in enormous quantities. Billions are produced every year. They are distributed across nearly every country on Earth. Health organizations consider them one of the most effective and affordable tools for preventing many sexually transmitted infections while also helping prevent unintended pregnancies. The materials have changed. The technology has improved. The purpose remains remarkably similar. Protection. That has always been the core idea. Whether the material was linen, animal intestine, leather, rubber, or latex. The goal never changed. People wanted safety. People wanted control. People wanted a future they could choose. And that brings us back to the beginning. A disease spreading across Europe, a terrified population, a desperate search for protection. Few people think about any of that when they see a condom today. It is just another everyday object. Small, cheap, ordinary. But ordinary objects often hide extraordinary histories. This one survived religious condemnation, political opposition, scientific misunderstanding, cultural stigma, global epidemics, and centuries of controversy. It influenced public health, military readiness, population growth, economic development, and human behavior on a scale few inventions can match. The next time you see one, remember what it actually represents. Not embarrassment, not controversy, not even sex. It represents one of humanity's oldest ambitions, the desire to take control of fate. For thousands of years, people have searched for ways to protect themselves from consequences they feared and futures they did not choose. The condom became one of the most successful tools ever created for that purpose. It was never just a piece of latex. It never was.